Okay, go ahead.
Fantastic. So I'm so thrilled to be back again. It's been a long 2 weeks. I hope you had a good time in that week that I wasn't able to come along, and I'll ask you about it and for any feedback or questions in a moment. But we can just have a little introduction for today, which is the second class of 3 higher trainings for dummies. Not because we're dummies, but just after the books, really. And so we've already looked at the higher training in ethics, and today we're going to have a look at the higher training in concentration. And then next week, the higher training in wisdom. So these are 3 trainings that they're called trainings because they don't necessarily come naturally. You know, some things come naturally. We don't necessarily need a book to learn how to do it. Like we don't need a book to learn how to walk. We just need a lot of support and a lot of determination. But other things don't come so naturally. And things, for instance, like parenting, which everybody expects should come naturally, but actually is a really steep learning curve. And also we need a lot of support there. The 3 higher trainings are called higher because they're essential skills, not just for this life. I mean, they are absolutely essential to be able to have any success or happiness in this life. And we see the disastrous results of when we don't have any of these trainings. But why they're called higher trainings is because the main purpose for us on a spiritual path is at the service of this inner journey, not just of a worldly life, not just of this one life, but actually at the service of our entire spiritual, emotional, physical well-being, and not just our own, but everybody's. So the higher part is about liberation from samsara, using these skills not just for a good life, but for a really good future. Either complete liberation from this up and down cycle, that's the minimum that we have the potential for, or also to develop all of our qualities and all of our incredible skills, hone our skills so that we can perfectly help everybody else. So taking the essence of this life to its ultimate, becoming liberated or enlightened. So with ethics, we stop creating more trouble, we stop making things more complicated and create the best conditions for a happy life, and then also create the best environment to continue on our spiritual journey. With concentration, as no doubt you've many times heard Venerable Rabina talk about the 2 wings of the bird. So the concentration is informed by these 2 wings, by love, kindness, and by a sense of interconnectedness, wisdom. And then the 3rd training being wisdom, which is the one that actually cuts the root of our delusions. Because who wants to just keep on battling problems over and over and over again? You know, you fix one problem and another one arises, or you solve something and then you get to the solution, you go, oh, hang on a sec, I knew that. I went through this whole thing 3 years ago and here I've done it again. So, you know, we don't want to do that. We want to have some resolutions here, some closure on samsara. So let's now set our motivation and do our motivation prayers, because that's what's going to make these trainings higher trainings, which is actually going to use them for their benefit and not just debase them in a way in such a short term, just one life. So John, if you can get the screen share up, fantastic. So the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. So this is a praise. When we recite it, think that everybody in the world is spontaneously, with great gusto, lifting up their voices in this praise. And as we do so, we kind of do this massive U-turn in our mind from worldly things to the amazing potential of Buddhahood. So with one voice, To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct. Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teachers of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sagata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. I think that we actually do that. And then the short mandala offering. So that's gathering up everything good and wonderful and putting it at the service of enlightenment, putting it at the service of all the qualities of enlightenment. So make it as big as you can. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kamni Achayami. I think that your mandala offering is joyously received by the Buddha. There's a twinkle in his eye and he fully accepts your offering. Taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So this really is how we adjust our heart. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So really think now we've calibrated our mind. We've put it in the right direction, the safe direction, a direction that's going to actually bring us the results that we're seeking. And we're motivated by our intense care for everybody. Just like we care about ourselves, we care about everybody. So with this motivation, we can dive right in. What I wanted to ask before we actually get into the concentration part, as a kind of kind of focusing our mind. So last week, some of you met and talked about the ethics and the training in ethics, and maybe even the ones of you that weren't there, but you might have had questions about anything that we talked about, the higher training in ethics. What kind of things came up for you? What's been on your mind? Any questions or comments? Anything at all? Just wave at me, or figuratively wave by pushing the hand button on Zoom, or put something in the chat. But how did you go? Tell me how you went. Oh, Shayla.
Looking for my notes.
Oh, all right. What stood out for you, Shayla? What anything that you were, particularly struck by or wondered about?
I can't find my notes. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Anybody else? You've got to have something. Does this mean that you're all like ethically confident?
Okay, I'll say something.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Something. No,
Move over.
just kidding. Hey, yeah, well, we weren't here. We missed a class, but I was glad to see that it's, what is it, the 3 higher powers for dummies. It's like, that's what I need. It seems like I'm always at square one. So I'm glad to see this. I looked over what I could of the notes. I admit I didn't get too far, but I'm glad you're doing this.
Look, I'm so happy to hear you say that. You must have a natural sense of humility, because not everybody has such a wonderful response to this. Sometimes people get offended. And in fact, I did have a class called Buddhism for Dummies, and I had to change the name because someone got really offended and left the class because they just said, I'm not a dummy, and walked out. And I was like, oopsie daisy. So, but it is really nice to think of ourselves as beginners, because it takes the pressure off. You stop having such brutally high expectations that kind of just freeze us and make us demoralized before we even begin. If we're beginners, we give ourselves some slack. We can be curious. We can jump in and not expect too much, and then get a lot out of it. So I'm thrilled to hear that.
I have a lot of those expectations, and I have to kind of work at not beating myself up for not doing a proper meditation in the morning and whatnot. I work really hard at it and spend a lot of time doing what I call rumination.
Aha. Well, we are going to talk about that today.
Okay.
So stay tuned. Where that's one of the things that I really want to
Anyway, thank you for being
put into a Buddhist context. So anybody else who was here, anything at all to let's see. Yeah, Barbara, go for it. Can you unmute? I'll ask you to.
Yes, something that really stood out for me. It's a simple saying, but it's really struck me. Be kind when it is possible. It's always possible.
I'm really glad that stood out for you. Yeah, that just hit me, and the reverberations are still going. Yeah, there's something quite amazing about the change in attitude, because so many times if we look in our mind, there's that little voice that's going, I can't do it. I can't stand it. I can't go on like this anymore. And it kind of directly counters that. Yeah, so that's great news. His Holiness would be very happy with you, Barbara. That's great. Okay, so and a question from Susan. Okay, so the second time learning about 3 higher training since she found my classes 2 years ago. So this time Susan's expecting even greater understanding and benefit, and it does make supreme common sense. Well, that's right. The Buddha's teachings are supreme common sense. That is a great way to put it, because it's not like the Buddha invented anything. He just perfectly described how things exist, relative level and an ultimate level, and then what we need to do to get in tune with reality. And when we get in tune with reality, then we stop suffering. And so these higher trainings, these 3 higher trainings, are about how to do that. They're the 3 essential skills of how to actually get in tune with reality, and that way stop putting in place all of the causes for suffering, all of the stop complicating our lives. So let's have a look then on the 3 higher trainings, and we're going to be talking about concentration today. And why we're talking about concentration now is because what we're aiming at, of course, is to be able to develop our wisdom, but we can't develop wisdom without concentration. And so we have so many distractions, don't we? We have distractions from externally, from what comes in through the senses continuously. And some of us have extreme sensitivities to that, to sight, to sounds, to light, to the distractions and busyness of life, all of these things. And to a degree, we can move house and find a nice quiet place to be, but then we have the distractions in our mind and those ones we can't move house from. So we need to give ourselves some space, not just physically, but mentally as well, from the objects of delusion. And so to do that, one of the things is to develop concentration. So a quote from Gelek Rinpoche, once we begin this practice of developing our concentration, we should continue every day until we reach our goal. So our goal is the kind of medium-term goal is single-pointed concentration. So not one that keeps on falling off, not one that makes us exhausted, but a really effortlessly and perfect, well-trained, single-pointed concentration. And so he says, if conditions are perfect, we can do this in as little as 3 months or so. So that's quite a statement, isn't it? And really that statement is about if we have all those conducive conditions. So think about, for instance, if you're training for the Olympics. So if you're an elite athlete, you're probably at some swimming school or whatever it is. There's an entire institution supporting you. You have how many individual coaches and nutrition coaches and this and that. Your day is calibrated to the minute of what you do, when you do it, how you do it, when you eat, when you drink, when you go to the toilet, when you rest, all of these things, scientifically researched, all the results are put in there, and then everybody helps you do it. And all you've got to do is do it. And then within 3 or 4 years, if 24 hours a day, that's what you're doing, you've got a chance of winning a medal at the Olympics, being the best of 7 billion people on the planet. So that's just in 3 or 4 years. Now imagine if we put the same effort into our mind. Actually, we wouldn't even need 4 years. We could do it in 3 years. But the conditions need to be really conducive. We need to have as much support around us, just like elite athletes do, to be able to have that faster result. But meanwhile, there are many weekend athletes that are highly skilled, super fit, and it informs all the rest of their life. So we can at least aim to that with our mind. We can become match fit, and then have that mental fitness to be able to meet the world. So Yangtze Rinpoche says, usually our minds are like cities of distraction, giving rise to countless superstitions and conceptual thoughts. Calming this, focusing on virtuous objects, is the basis for cultivating realizations. Without this, it's still just intellectual and we still suffer. So this is the key difference, that concentration is so that we can take all of our intellectual learning and our understanding about things and bring it into our experience, into lived experience, into applied wisdom. It's no good just having an idea. It has to be applied wisdom. And what we use to apply it is concentration. So in a way, concentration is our technology. And normally our concentration, just like, I'm not sure what your name was. You said you were Willis. So normally our concentration is like dirty technology. It's motivated by our delusions, by our afflictions, by our distorted states of mind, by our hopes, our cravings, our fears, our anxieties. And that technology has run away with us, and it has side effects. It creates pollution. It's like dirty technology. But if our concentration is fueled by compassion, by altruism, by a sense of connectedness, that's clean technology. And then our concentration becomes a machine for enlightenment. We need the machine, but it's a conducive machine, and it only has good side effects, no toxic side effects. So in a way, the strength of our focus and our concentration, it's almost like a neutral thing, and we have to see what it is that's powering it. And so I have a little bugbear, and a lot of Buddhists have a little bugbear about the whole mindfulness industry now, how the mindfulness practices have been co-opted into the service of business, into the service of the worldly concerns, very short-term service. So they've kind of taken this technology of mindfulness and made it a dirty technology, instead of actually recognizing that mindfulness has to be fueled by virtue. It's got to be fueled by our ethics, or it's not going to have a good result. So let's have a look what it is. So what's concentration? An easy way to say it, it's a mental factor. Concentration is a mental factor that's capable of abiding one-pointedly on an object of virtue without distraction. So this is one of the important points here. It's abiding on an object of virtue. That's what makes it higher concentration. Because ordinary concentration can abide on anything. So a hitman has to have good concentration. A shoplifter has to have good concentration. Someone plotting revenge and murder has to have good concentration. So concentration on itself isn't necessarily going to lead to any benefit. So it must be, our concentration must be informed by ethics, by virtue. And that's why we had that class first, as well as by wisdom. So then we use that mental factor of concentration to be able to place our mind on what we want to cultivate, what we want to bring our attention to. So instead of being co-opted by our afflictions and bringing our attention to all the bad things that have happened and all the ways that people have wronged us, that's like attention capture, and it's being captured by our afflictions. So we have to put in an initial amount of quite concentrated effort to make sure that it's a virtuous activity. And then we practice and practice until our mind, it becomes easy to focus. And then we develop the quality of our focus, so that it's a little bit like when you're going to take a picture of something. You put the camera in front of the object. So that's like the initial putting your mind on the object, but then it focuses. And it takes a moment, doesn't it? First it's fuzzy, and then it comes into focus. And that's like tightening our focus. So anything, what's virtuous? Anything that brings happiness, the positive mental qualities, love, compassion, wisdom. And if we develop concentration, it's amazing. The benefits are incredible. One of the results is both mental and physical pliancy. So what that means mentally, realizations come easily. Things happen nicely. Can you imagine? And physically, we have physical pliancy, which means we don't hold all that tension in our body anymore. Our body is comfortable. It becomes pain-free. all of our energy flows well. So we very rarely get sick. So just right there, these benefits, look at those, we just think, wow, that's a good incentive. Because most of the time, when we're trying to develop realizations, when we're trying to figure something out, we just push, don't we? We push harder and harder. And that quality of pushing, of forcing ourselves, is often brutal and informed by a whole lot of mean attitudes to ourselves and others. So we really got to look at this, has a whole different flavor to it. Concentration, when we're in the zone, when we are concentrated, it's naturally blissful. It's not just a neutral state. It's not flatlining. It's actually a very engaged, alert, pleasurable state. It's naturally blissful. It's a state that engenders more good qualities, that naturally enhances good qualities, and it benefits others. So concentration on something that isn't going to benefit others isn't higher concentration and is usually fueled or motivated by the delusion. So either attachment or maliciousness, as well as ignorance, confusion. So I've got a couple of other things to say about concentration. Why do we need concentration? In a way, it's so that when we are freed from our constant distractions, we make better decisions. So we're more easily able to discriminate between what we should do, what's positive and what's negative, what to practice, what to abandon. So it actually makes it easier to be ethical. And the whole purpose to develop concentration or mindfulness or whatever it is that you want to call it, is to become at minimum a good person, a better person, a help to society, not a hindrance. It is also the technology that will bring us to enlightenment. Without it, without this mental technology, there is no enlightenment. It's not going to happen. So it is crucial that we develop it for many, many reasons. And one way that we can think of it is that our concentration is like the two guards at a tower. And in that analogy, concentration is the two strong arms that hold the axe. So it's those two guards. And there's a couple of ways that we can think of them. So one is to think of them as mindfulness and vigilance, or mindfulness and alertness. So these two guards, they're on the lookout tower, and they are guarding our mind from non-virtuous mental states, from keeping us safe from exposure to the objects of delusion. So one of them makes sure that they're looking out. Well, is there any disturbing mind state arising? They've got their eye on the horizon. And the other one's making sure that the first one hasn't fallen asleep. It's like backup. Or it's like when you're driving, part of you is driving and the other one's making sure you're not falling asleep at the wheel. It's a very nice combination. The other thing that there is a nuance there is it's not just mindfulness, but mindfulness of what? Because, it's not just mindfulness of a hitman, it's what are we being mindful of? What are we focusing our attention on? And it's got to be things that are conducive to developing our good qualities and to helping others. It can't just be a neutral thing. It's kind of wasting the effort if it's neutral, and it certainly can't be something that's motivated by afflictive states of mind or negative emotions. Then I also thought I'd just throw in something about COVID, because COVID really showed us the state of our concentration and how much our attention is captured by what comes in through the senses. because when we all went into lockdown, you know, it's a couple of years ago now, it was quite an extreme experience for some people, and it was quite frightening what happened. And for other people, it was just bliss. It was like, yay, finally I have the perfect retreat conditions now. So how come there was such a range of responses to it? So one of them that people talk about of foggy headedness, and how all the days melded into one and you couldn't quite distinguish between them, and a whole lot of Zoom fatigue. And that's because if we're used to our sense of what's happening is to do with what's coming in through the senses. So everything that happens to us happens in a context. So it happens at a place, or with various people, or in a particular season, or with a particular weather. There's all these other things that frame or contextualize our experiences. And when we're just at home in the same room, day in, day out, there's nothing to frame our experiences. And so it just melds into this one great big long fog, and we can't remember what's happened. And so one of the things that happened with Zoom fatigue is so many people lost their short-term memory, couldn't remember one day to the next, couldn't remember what they had for breakfast, nothing, because there was nothing to associate it with. So it just really shows our reliance on what comes in through the senses for our sense of being, our sense of who we are, our sense of purpose in life, our awareness of what's going on. It's all determined on those things. And all of that is our focus outwards. And when we don't have that external stimulation, we get brain fog, which just really reveals to us the state of play that's there. So then, of course, if we're on a spiritual journey and we're used to looking within, then suddenly we have conducive circumstances. Then suddenly we don't even have to have the discipline of not following distractions. We're just free of them. How amazing is that? So really different experiences for people, and quite shocking. And so now, after a couple of years, and we'll probably talk about this more next week, that people's whole sense of self, of who they are, has been completely disrupted, because we haven't been getting the normal feedback from the world, acknowledgement, sense of status, going to work, all of those things that we normally have. So our sense of who we are has crumbled because it hasn't been reflected back to us. And so for most people, this is very distressing, and they don't know what to grasp on. And that's why everybody's so touchy, so sensitive, so easily taking offense, or easily having rage arise, because this sense of self has become very, very fragile. But for a Buddhist, this is wonderful, because all of that has now been just fallen away. And now we can do the analysis of who am I? Who am I really? Where exactly, how and where am I grasping at this sense of self? And actually see that grasping and the suffering that it brings, and the freedom to let go of that grasping. So if we had good concentration, we wouldn't get Zoom fatigue, and we wouldn't have brain fog, and we'd be effortlessly alert and have a whole lot more energy. Okie dokie. Any questions yet before we go on to obstacles and antidotes? Questions, comments, anything at all? How are you going? Does it make sense? Yep, it's okay. Rightio. Make sure that you wave at me when there's something, anything at all. You've got to jump in. Brian, you're smiling at me. I'm just wondering, what are you thinking there in the background in front of all those wonderful books?
I was just thinking, Helen, this is maybe every area of Buddhist psychology, is that, you know, everything is very logical and everything makes sense. but it's really hard to apply it to real life. And this is very relevant here with, you know, the concentration and the focus. You know, some days I can sit there for 20 minutes and meditate and it's great. Sometimes 5 minutes and I just have to get up. And you were calling this like for dummies. I think it's perfect because I think it doesn't matter how many years you study. There's always new things to learn and you always need to revisit everything. So, it's a work in progress.
Yep. It is a work in progress and it's a training. So there's so much in sports psychology that we can apply to our training in concentration. And so, you know, every day at the same time, athletes do their training, and then they get to calibrate and they get to see how your abilities go up and down, your strength and your energy goes up and down. But you can only tell that if you do it at the same time for the same amount of time each day, then you get to see it. So that kind of stamina, then you get an overview of it. And a whole lot of the ways that in sports psychology, you have incentives to keep on going. And one of the main things is to not focus on the difficulties, but to focus on the benefits. So to have a benefit of winning a medal, it's very tangible. And it's often also driven by competitiveness and all sorts of, it's hardly ever kind of the real amazing athletes compete against themselves. Then kind of the other ones that get into trouble later on compete against everybody else. But it's a very strong motivator. And for us, our motivators are much more internal and not quite as tangible as that. So we have to compete against the disturbing emotions and we have to be going for the prize of enlightenment. So then we have to know what enlightenment is. You know, it's easy to know what a medal is, and, you know, you'll get in the papers and you'll have it on your mantelpiece and all of those things, and everyone will love you and you'll feel fantastic and this whole, you know, fantasy about it. But we've got to have the same idea of how amazing enlightenment is and an understanding that it's possible. So all of that sports psychology, we can just transfer over to our concentration practice because they've figured out all the life hacks about it, but they just have a really small goal. But the psychology is the same. So the Buddha, I suppose, had some really excellent sports psychology too. The sport of the affray with the disturbing emotions. So let's have a look at what the Buddha said about the obstacles, the main obstacles that we have, and the main antidotes that we can employ. And I love this photograph of Lama Yeshe. You know, the way everything in his body language sitting there for meditation, it's so contained, it's so relaxed, and yet it's so clearly alert and full of energy. It's a beautiful calibration, isn't it? So samadhi or concentration, one of the main obstacles is laziness. So I'll just go through them and then we can talk about them. And laziness isn't what you think it is. There are levels of laziness. Then forgetfulness. Then we have mental wandering and depression. So that's like getting too agitated and excited, or getting too flat and stuck. Then we have the failure to correct problems as they arise. And of course, if we don't correct them when they arise, what happens is we develop bad habits. And of course, if anyone's ever learned a musical instrument like piano or something, if you don't get your hands in the correct position at the beginning when you first start learning, I didn't, my hands were, my wrists were all flopped down. For the whole rest of the years that I learned, my teacher would say, lift your wrists. Every time, lift your wrist, because I developed a bad habit just at the beginning through no intention to do so. So we really need to correct problems as they arise, and then we need to know when to stop. So the over applying the antidotes. And that's one of those things, you know, that happens with artists not knowing when to stop. So these are the main obstacles, and there are antidotes. So let's have a look at them. So laziness, there's just the general laziness, and that's because we've got our sights on just the short-term pleasures of cyclic existence. Even though they run out so quickly, even though they're so unreliable, we're just really short-term, dominated by the senses. And because of that, if we don't have our view on the bigger goal, then we get lazy. So one of the antidotes to laziness is to remind ourselves there is an inherent pleasure in being able to focus our mind in harmony of body and mind in meditation. There is a pleasure that arises from being able to concentrate, or in our normal terms of being in the zone, a state of grace, you know, all of those things that we hear about. There is a pleasure about it. There's difficulty to get there, but and so we've got to remind ourselves that this is a nice experience once we've got match fitness. And then reminding ourselves of all of the benefits that can come from it. Reminding ourselves, hey, if I develop my concentration, I'll be able to get realizations easily, quickly. They'll flow. They won't be so hard won. I'll be able to stop flogging myself, you know, metaphorically. We'll be able to, if we develop concentration, even when we're asleep, we'll be able to use our sleep to generate realizations, to think through problems, to wake up in the morning with the solution. You know, as it's almost like cheating, isn't it? You've got great concentration. You think about whatever issues going on. You go to sleep in this wonderful way. Your mind just keeps on going while you're asleep. You wake up, ta-da, here's the solution. I didn't even do anything. Well, you did, but it's the results of concentration. So you can accomplish so much. You can accomplish the impossible. So that's one of the number one things with sports psychology. Don't focus on the difficulties, focus on the benefits. That's a cure for laziness. Certainly not telling you, oh, you lazy so-and-so, you're no good. That won't ever do it. You'll just burn out that way. So careful. The other thing, and Venerable Robina has pointed this out, you know, I remember a teaching that she gave here, subtle laziness is thinking that we can't do it, that other people might be able to get enlightened, but there's no way I could. That's a form of laziness. Who knew? Oh, okie dokie. Really underestimating your potential. That is a form of laziness. So, you know, there's a couple of really easy things that we can do about that. Okay, something from Susan. I've read that if one's too distracted to meditate for long, it's a sign to do more until the monkey mind is still. Yes, so then also it's like the same thing with physical training. You've got to know what your limit is. You might be able to go for a jog for 10 minutes, but not for 4 hours. You know, if you went for 4 hours, you'd break something, but 10 minutes you can do. So then you just stretch it to 15 minutes. But I know with the enthusiasm of beginners, we'll go, oh, this meditation's great. You know, we'll have a taste of concentration. We'll go, oh, that was wonderful. I want it again. So then we'll sit down, and now suddenly our motivation's gone really short term to just the pleasure of concentration rather than concentration. So now we're like chasing it. It's like a drug, like chasing the dragon. We're chasing the high of the meditation. And of course, it's not going to come back again, not like that. And so then we just try harder and harder and harder. And now we've got a bad habit. I mean, I'm saying all of this because I've done it wrong so many times. And then I've gone, oh, I give up. I hate meditation. But it's because I didn't even know what I was doing. So these obstacles and antidotes are a real help. Then the second one, so forgetfulness. So Nagarjuna likened the mind to an elephant tied by the rope of memory or mindfulness to the pillar of the object of meditation. So in the middle there is the object of meditation, and you're harnessed to that, you're tied to that by your mindfulness. And at first it's like your elephant's just raging around. And when I first try and focus on something, I feel like that I've tethered my mind to the object, and it's in the vicinity. It's roaming around the extremities of the topic, but I'm not really focused on it. But I'm at least in the vicinity. I'm not thinking about something entirely different. I am thinking about the thing or focusing on the thing, but just not well. So that's the beginning of it. That's okay. So what do we focus on? It can be any object, but as long as it's not an object that causes more delusions to arise. And so normally what we focus on are the objects of our attachment or aversion. And normally we have no control over that focus. We are captured by those things, by our senses and by our afflictive habit patterns. We're dominated by them. So we might think that it's easy to concentrate, but it's just that our attention has been continuously captured by something, like a movie, for instance. It's very easy to concentrate on a movie. I can watch movies for hours. How come I can't meditate for hours? Why is that? Well, it's because my attention's constantly captured by the movie. So then once you're there faced with the bare face of your innate mind, and you've got to put your mind onto something, then you find out, I don't have any strength at all. So the object that we focus, if we're going to put all this effort into it, it's worth having a virtuous object, not just a neutral one. Because while we're familiarizing our mind with this object, we're going to become intimately involved with it. So it may as well be something really beneficial and really virtuous. Like, for instance, an image of the Buddha, rather than, say, a candle flame or a flower. And then we want consistency. So the thing about forgetfulness, we just have consistency. So until we reach our goal. And that means same time, same place every day, regardless of the day's results. So even if your mind's all over the place, you just go, oh, well, today my mind's all over the place, but I'm just going to sit here for the 20 minutes, whether it's working or not. So you keep yourself within the vicinity and then start being gently, bringing your mind back. So then after that, of course, then comes wondering and depression. So the tension of effort can produce agitation or tire us out and we get flat and depressed. And if we force our mind, forced concentration can actually produce a heavy state of mind, can even lead to sleepiness. So probably all of us have had the experience of going to teachings with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and it's all great and he's telling stories, and then the moment he starts talking about, you guessed it, emptiness, everybody just falls asleep uncontrollably. Why does this happen? Because suddenly we have to put effort into our concentration and we get tired. Stories, it's great, lovely to listen. The moment we've got to focus on something that's unfamiliar to us, that takes a lot of mental effort, we're not match fit for it. So don't worry, it's just the state of it. Sergio, you had a question.
Yes, when you're focusing on, let's say, a compassion, let's say, I mean, it's not enough just to be focused on the word itself, but I mean, actual act of compassion, I guess, would be something a little more, I wouldn't say useful, a little more, yeah, I guess more useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Under
So
focus.
the object of focus, something that's virtuous, i.e. something that will bring about long-term peace and happiness. But then how we focus, there's methods, and usually we alternate between analysis and then stabilization. So the analysis kind of gets us focused onto the topic, around it, all the different points, so that it's almost like creating the picture, all the dots until the picture's there, and then we stop and we hold our mind still on that analysis. And just before we're about to fall off, then we go back to the analysis again. So it's this two-way training, and we use both methods in the same meditation session.
Okay.
And
Thank
so for compassion, for instance, it would be thinking about all the instances of compassion, what it is, how it manifests in the minds of Buddhas, how it manifests in the minds of sentient beings, all the different analogies, until we get this really rich, informed feeling and picture. And then we stop and we let it permeate us, absorb into us, really become so familiar with it, it's like becomes second nature. And then when we're about to fall off, when our focus is getting a little dull, then we go back to the analysis again to sharpen it up.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So thank you, Sergio. Okie dokie. So then, okay, so we've got wandering and depression. So the coarse wandering mind is, let's see, no, sorry. The coarse depression, when we get tired like that and we fall asleep, it's kind of obvious. The depression has hit, the fogginess and that heaviness. But what's quite dangerous is the subtle depression, and that's when we can hold the object, but it's very foggy, and there's not really any clarity there, and our meditation lacks strength. And why this is quite a dangerous state to be in is because there's no manifest disturbing emotion. So we're not agitated, and so we might think, oh, this is peace of mind, but actually what it is subtle sinking mind. And so if we get too lulled into that, because it is nice, you know, the disturbing minds aren't arisen like that, it can make it very, very difficult later on to develop realizations. So kind of being lulled into that, it's almost like we succumb to the allure of a mental sinking. Got to be very wary of that. There's also subtle distraction that happens, like when we're reading a book, we're reading the words, but our mind's somewhere else. You know, so we're in the vicinity of the words, but we're not focused. There's no clarity or sharpness there. We're jumping around this all over the place. Sergio, another question?
Sorry, I forgot to move my hand. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Rightio. So the other thing, of course, that will happen, that what I think of as the inner saboteur comes along, and when you are finally concentrating and you're experiencing the pleasant feelings of that, of being free of distraction, of having a really clear mind, and then the next thing that comes in are good ideas, you know. And so one of the tutors to His Holiness the Dalai Lama was saying, you know, he has his best ideas in meditation. And it's like, because you've created some space, now actually some realizations, some ideas, they just naturally come up. So for people that aren't on a spiritual path, that's pretty much why they meditate, because you get wonderful art ideas, or you have mathematical solutions come to mind. You solve political problems, you know, you discover inventions. You actually invent something and there it is. Aha. But that also is a distraction. So to kind of ameliorate that, for us beginners, I reckon, you just have a pen and paper and you jot it down as it comes up. You jot it down and you put it aside, and you put it aside in your mind because you've captured it. You'll be able to think about it after, but for now, our intention was to focus, and that's what we're going to do. And then afterwards, after you've done what you set out to do, then you can pick up your paper in the break and go, now, what was that wonderful idea? So I've got to say, a whole lot of Langri-Thammasena projects have come from my distractions in Yungnay. And Langri-Thammasena has really benefited, but I've had to be very careful. So then we have the last two, the failure to correct problems and then correcting problems that aren't there. So one of them is that we don't really have a meta-awareness. If we're becoming depressed, to just bring our awareness up. Or if we're becoming too agitated, we're kind of getting overexcited or too involved in things, to calm ourselves down. And so this, it's like tuning a violin, you know, not too tight and not too loose. And it takes a little bit, when you're tuning a violin, you kind of go this way, that way, this way, that way. And you have very fine listening to tell until it's just right. And then you stop. And just like with a violin, after playing it for a while, with all of that activity that's going on, it needs to be retuned. It's not like set and forget and you never have to do it again for 10 years. It's like actually, even during the piece, from one movement to the next, you do a little final subtle recalibration. So that's what we're doing with our mind. That's how we use the technology of our concentration. So when it's always good to relax first before meditating. So doing stretches, releasing the tension so that we start with a relaxed body and then a relaxed mind, rather than going in full ball with all of the brutal aggression of the day. It's not going to be conducive. And then if we start getting really down, it's like we metaphorically splash water on our face. So we remember loving kindness. We remember the benefits, and that's like splashing the water on our face. And if we're really getting too sleepy, then actually splashing water on your face. But don't give up. Go and splash some water on your face and then go and sit back down until the allotted time. And then then knowing when to stop, so that you don't start having the fixing things continuously become like an obsessive compulsive thing, that once you've done that little calibration, then you stop and you rest, so that the pauses between activity become longer. So that's why that last distraction is called the over application of the antidote. And that's when we overthink things. It's when we're having a wonderful conversation with people and we all go, yeah, aha, I get it. And instead of everybody shutting up, someone will go, and yeah, what about this? And they'll dive in and do even more. It's like, no, just let it sit. I mean, I do that myself all the time. It's like, oh dear, too much. Overdid it again, overcooked. So don't overcook it. So with all of that, I'd like us to do a little meditation, shall we? Just a little an exercise on focus. So let's adjust our posture. Nicely calibrated, straight spine, but also relaxed. So nice balance between putting some effort in and being relaxed. Then we adjust our motivation. So we have whatever our short-term goals are, but we stretch them out. So of course we want a sense of peace, and we want to be able to control our mind, and we want to be able to focus. But why? Not just so that I can, play the stock market or pass the exam, but why? For happiness. And what kind of happiness? Lasting happiness. And who for? Not just me, but it's got to be everybody. So that's why we'll do the meditation. So first, close in, near the edge of your own body there, just start to listen. So listen to your breath coming in and out. Maybe listen to the rustle of your clothes. And then just shift your awareness. We're going to go outwards a little bit. So shift your awareness to being aware of any small sounds within your room, just within the confines of the room where you are. Might be a little insect or a little mouse, or the sound of the curtains in the breeze. And then shift your focus to what's happening just outside your house, maybe in your garden, around the outside walls of your house. And then maybe the cars going by. So shift your focus to the suburb. So where the car, instead of just as it arises and falls away just outside your house, how it is a suburb away, and it's continuously there. That sound. And then out to the whole country. So notice how our concentration has shifted from listening with our ears to listening with our mental consciousness. And notice how we are constantly drawn whenever there is an external sound. We can't help but shift our consciousness to that. But that's okay. You just shift it back again whenever you notice. And notice how the flavor of your concentration can be focused on one sound, tightening your attention, or it can become very aware of the space between, very expansive attention. So then slowly bring your awareness back from the whole country to your suburb, and then to the surroundings outside of your house or your room, and then to inside your room, and then to your body, the house of your body. And then bring your awareness to the sounds within your body. Maybe the sounds of your stomach gurgling, the sounds of your breathing in your ears, the sound of your blood pumping through your body, the sound of tinnitus in your ear. Notice the difference of the flavor of your concentration when it is drawn inwards, and then become aware of the inner space of your mental focus, not the ears. But just like there was the infinite space outside of us, there is the infinite space within. And within that expansiveness, whatever thought, feeling, mental sensation arises, just notice and name. Notice what it is. Notice if you have a reaction. Just name what category: a thought, an emotion, and then instead of getting involved, notice, name, and then become aware of that inner space in which everything arises and falls away. You're not the thought, you're not the emotion, you're not the distraction. If anything, you are that infinite spaciousness. And so to draw this meditation to a close, we can recognize that this is the fundamental state of the mind, unsullied by thought, in its own state. Mere spaciousness and luminosity. And then dedicate your efforts, regardless of the current result of the meditation, dedicate the effort to full awakening for oneself and others. So it's important to remember when we do any kind of meditation to not worry so much about whether it worked or not, because you might lose that battle, but you're gonna win the war, right? So bit by bit, we'll have ups and downs in our meditation, but that's okay. That's natural. Okay, so questions or comments? Is all okay? Okie dokie. So I just got some little practical hints then of what to do, especially as beginners. Some handy hints, solutions, and to make it easier for ourselves. So one of the things, and we're often told this, is to abide in physical solitude. So making sure that we have a space to meditate that is free of social media. So not just putting your phone down and turning it onto silent, but putting your phone in a different room. So believe it or not, there's actual studies about this with university students and their level of distraction. And if they all left their phones in their bag, they were still really distracted. But if they all put their phones in a box and the box was put outside the room, it's like out of the context, then it's out of mind. So if we want to concentrate we've got to make our environment conducive. And that's one of the things. Put whatever social media devices in another room. And then our pets, our wonderful pets that keep us happy day to day, they do the job well, but when it comes to meditating, they can be a distraction, and they're often quite attracted to us when we're meditating. So just like we're trying to discipline our mind, if our pets are in the room, we have to discipline them. And so they have to sit quietly next to you, not in your lap, and they can't muck up. And if they muck up, they have to go out. And it's just simple behaviorism. You can always dedicate for your pets. And of course, when there's teachings on and things like that, it's great having them in to hear the Dharma. But when we're trying to concentrate, no. Then if you've got all those distractions, you've got your list, you write your list down so that you can release those distractions by putting them on a piece of paper. And then also if you're really tired and you go, I'm going to have a coffee to sit down and meditate. No. You need a rest. So have a nap and then get up refreshed and meditate. Don't like have the artificial physical stimulation to keep your mind awake when you sit down and meditate. No. Possibly when you're studying, but even then, studying the Dharma, it's not going to go in well. It's just going to go in intellectually. So actually, Corey Jackson has often said to people, especially who when they say, I just fall asleep in meditation all the time. He says, that's not a problem with your meditation. That's a problem that you don't have enough sleep. And the same thing, having a drink to calm down, to relieve the stress, relying on these external things that in the end, like my ex-husband, he died of alcoholism. He died of liver failure because he relied on an alcohol to calm down before he did any study, before he did any meditation, before he did anything. And it's a terrible habit to get into. So do ourselves a favor, physical solitude, and then mental solitude. Free of rumination. So mental solitude is a little harder, but if we've got the physical one, if we've got a little bit of discipline with the physical one, it makes it easier for the mental one. So it means distancing ourselves from objects of delusion. So physically, it's not enough. So when we have those lists going through our mind, we have to put them aside. And when we have our negative thought patterns come up to dominate us and bulliness, we have to have a strategy ready then and there to put them down. We've got to know the antidotes to apply, the antidotes to attachment, the antidotes to maliciousness, to plotting revenge, to dwelling on betrayals. And we've got to know the antidotes to obsessively analyzing, because again, we can have a very clear focus, but if it's obsessive, that analysis that comes out of it is going to be tainted. It won't come with wisdom. It'll come with cynicism, with nihilism, with all the doom and gloom and catastrophizing. So having a focus that's motivated by that, it's no good for us. So we need to have that, I think Corey calls it mental hygiene. So that means having creating a sense of mental solitude, carving out some space for us that's really nice in our mind, a nice attitude, kind attitude, and also disciplined. Okay, so we have to, Yangtze Rinpoche says that we need to remember how all of those disturbances and distractions, how they actually harm us, so that we remember to apply the antidotes. But we need a kind of meta-analysis for that, especially when we start obsessing about things, because we think it's about the things and we don't notice it could be anything that we're obsessing about. It's the obsessing energy that's the problem. And that's why we need those two guards, mindfulness and alertness, to tell what's going on. And then we do need to have a break. So as Lama Zoe Rinpoche says, the real holiday is the mind free of delusion. So we do need to have a break. And so often we think that we need a holiday and we need to go somewhere or do something else. But actually what that yearning is for being free of delusion. We need a holiday from the delusions. And so that's why having a holiday sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, because we go on holiday, we change our context, we do have a bit of a holiday from the external things, and we maybe release some of the worries that we have in our mind. We sleep uncontrollably, we actually catch up on sleep, we have a rest, and then because the internal distractions are gone for a moment, we think we're fixed. And we just leave it at that. And we just have a nice time at the holiday, using up all of our good karma, but nothing's changed. So actually, the ultimate retreat would be to go to the beach, to have the pool, to have room service, to sleep for 3 days, to relax, and then in this optimum state, start meditating. Start working on your problems. It's no good working on our problems when we're stressed and upset. We'll never come up with the right answer. We've got to be relaxed, happy, clean, well-fed, having just done some wonderful exercise, swimming in the pool, the sun is shining, and now everything's perfect to start looking at the delusions and what we can do about them. So build that into your holiday, and I guarantee it'll be a fantastic holiday. Then we'll be able to, having a break, we'll have a proper break, a mental break as well as a physical one. And then when we venture out into the world, we will be rejuvenated. So then picking an object to focus on, a virtuous object of meditation. So of course, one of the very best ones would be an image of the Buddha, so that we become familiar with that image, or a form of the Buddha, or a seed syllable, or a mantra, the sound of a mantra. All of these objects are internal objects. So we might have the sound, we might hear it as a reminder, but actually the focus should be hearing it in our mind. So you might play a mantra during the day, but then when you sit down, then hear it in your mind, hear it with your mental consciousness, not your ears, because we're trying to bring our focus inwards. And if you're meditating on an image of the Buddha, have an image of the Buddha there and become very familiar with it, and then close your eyes and have that image within your mind. Because if we use our eyes to stare at an image, that is actually attention capture. We need to be able to have that as a reminder and then have it happen in our mind with our mental awareness, because that's the technology that we're developing. And also things like if it's a statue or a tanka and then it's gone, or it burns down, or the candle flame goes out, whoa, what are you going to do then? Or you can't find your nice music, or it's horrible music and you're so trained to listen to music that now you're meditating on horrible music. Like, none of that's going to work. So it's got to be an internal thing. Then avoiding laxity and excitement, the allure of sleep. You just got to go, I know what you're up to. And the excitement of distraction is like, no, I know what you're up to there. For now, I'm looking at the big picture, the big benefits. That's my incentive. So I found, especially in teachings, that that sleep, it's like it flirts with us. It feels so nice and you're just like, oh yeah, I could really go to sleep. You gotta be really like, no, I got your number. I know what's going on here, and I am not falling for that one. I'm not here for the immediate sensual experience of sleep. I'm here for something else. And then we try, and once we've got this all kind of set up nicely, and we've got our virtuous object, we're avoiding laxity or excitement, then we, instead of expanding the amount of time we sit, we try and develop the quality. So 20 minutes, don't just go tomorrow 30 minutes, so on. Stick with 20 minutes for a good year or so, and possibly 30. And within that, just try and get better at it, so that when you sit down, it takes a much shorter time to focus and become present. It's just like boom, boom, boom. And then the quality of your focus becomes more effortless and clearer, and you can calibrate it like tuning the violin. And at the end, you can dedicate it in such a way that you can also take that back out into the external world again. You don't completely lose that internal experience. So the quality gets better. So that's the rule of thumb. With our image of a Buddha, for instance, I really like this image. All Buddha images are beautiful, by the way, because the Buddha is always beautiful, but some images are more artistically accomplished than others. Yes, that's true. Conventional truth. So you find an image that really speaks to you. And I like these images that are slightly more photographic, that have a bit of depth in them. And so you stare at this until you've kind of fused with the picture. You've entered into it, and you can see the depth, and you start actually not just looking at a cartoon, you know, a yellow picture like The Simpsons, but you're actually using this image to think about the Buddha, to think about enlightenment, about what the enlightened qualities are. So for instance, this is a course on the 3 higher trainings. So the 3 higher trainings are represented in this image by the 3 colored robes of a Buddha. And so it's there encapsulated. The 3 higher trainings protect us. They protect Buddhahood, Buddha nature. And they beautify it as well. So it's right there in the picture. So we become very familiar, and then we close our eyes, and then we let that image, we experience that with our mental consciousness. And so it might just be a fuzzy yellow shape. That's okay. Don't worry too much about the details at the start. The thing is that it's not imagery. It's an experience. And because our memory prompt is usually a picture, a visual thing, we often think visualization or imagination is visual, but it's not. It's an internal experience. Whichever sense that we use to get us there, the whole experience is internal. It's not dependent on our senses. So it's not a visual thing that we're doing here. What we're doing is we're becoming familiar with the Buddha. And so we're getting an idea of the Buddha's body language, about the Buddha's presence, about the history of the historical Buddha, about all the different Buddhas, about Buddha nature, about all the aspects of enlightenment. And an image has it all in there, so it's easier to get to. And it's certainly more inspiring than a list of dot points in a book. But you can also do those if you have a very vivid internal life. A list of dot points will do fine. So your internal experience becomes very vivid, like a healthy personal relationship. And you really start feeling that the Buddha's there. Like this is a window. The Buddha's there all the time, and I'm just looking out the window finally and noticing, oh my God, the Buddha's here. So then your meditation becomes very tangible as an inner experience. And of course, where is all of this happening? The entire thing, it's happening in our mind. Even just thinking about a Buddha, an enlightened being, that's not separate to us. That's happening in our mind. So then all the wonderful meditations, then once you've got all of this established, then you have the relationship developing. So the Buddha's light coming to you and washing through you. And physiologically, that is by just imagining that, by feeling the light like a cool shower on a hot summer's day, feeling the and washing through you. And then just like when you take the glasses out of the dishwasher and they're all sparkly. And then the golden light comes flowing through you, and that's like sunshine during winter. And how amazing that feels, and how you absorb all those enlightened qualities. So all of that's an internal experience, but physiologically, you also go through it. It changes you physically. It changes your emotional habits and how you view yourself and the world. And so then, as with all the Buddhist meditations, you go through this process of transformation where you start feeling different. It's a physiological life hack. And so then when you come up from the meditation, you arise as the Buddha. You don't arise as an ordinary hopeless human being. You arise as the Buddha. And so then every day you manifest as the Buddha, and every day what you're relating to is your Buddha potential. And actually what they say is all the Buddha images and tankas and everything, you think of them as a mirror. They are a mirror of your potential that we're cut off from at the moment. But the very fact that we can even see or comprehend or think about a Buddha, where is that happening? In your mind. So you can look in the mirror and you can admire your virtue. And you can ask, who am I really? Well, the answer is a potential Buddha. So, before I do the summary, questions, comments, anything? What do you have? Yes, Barbara, go for it.
Thank you, Miffi. Almost every morning I do a guided meditation through Tubta Norbaling. And like this morning, Venerable Dundra did a guided meditation on Tonglen. And it was incredible. And I think I could try to do that meditation on my own for 10 years and not benefit from it, or I don't know even how to explain it. Am I just, I rely on guided meditation.
No, that's okay, because especially as beginners, we need to know what we're meditating on before we meditate. And so part of it is doing research, and then part of it is practicing. That's why it's called meditation practice. And it's like with playing music, you know, you've got the music there and you've got to practice, and you're reading the music. You have to have heard the piece first. And that's what a guided meditation is like, that you're hearing it, you're being led through the experience, and it's very nice. And especially because someone who's leading a meditation should have all of the essential points in it, so you get the full experience. The other thing about meditating physically together when we're all in the same room, it's much easier to concentrate, because physiologically, when you practice together as a group, whether it's meditation or a puja, your heartbeats start synchronizing. You become aligned, and so then the energy becomes streamlined and very powerful. So it is easier to do the meditation, to concentrate, to have realizations, because of that energy of a group. And you know, the analogy is like trying to sweep the room with one twig or with a broom. You know, it's completely different. So this also happens over Zoom though, but not physiologically, through our mental consciousness. So when we're together online, there is a time where we are calibrated together. And I've noticed this when we take teachings, you know, so from Geshe Zopa on Sundays, he teaches online and has been for the last 2 years. And so you know that there's all these different people online simultaneously, and you're all listening at the same time. So just having that knowledge makes this difference. And me being able to see all of you here on Zoom, so it's with my eyes, but really I have this mental awareness of us all together. So it's more subtle, but it happens. We become aligned. And I've seen it when we do retreats online, that people have similar experiences. It takes a different type of calibration to get you there, but it really happens. So it's important that we meditate together, and we do that. But then you have to then do your practice at home and lead yourself through the meditation. And it's kind of like the difference between going to the gym and you do it all together at the gym, and then going home and doing your exercises at home. For ages, they're not going to be as good, they're not going to be as intense, but what you're doing is you're keeping the momentum. And so that when you go back to the gym, you're not starting from scratch again. You've kept your fitness. So it's okay. And then slowly, you'll be able to do the meditation on your own, without having to have a prompt of reading it, without having to have a prompt of hearing it. You'll know the sequence. It'll be second nature. And then you'll be able to start going through the sequence really at your own pace. So it's all part of the process, and that is fine, Barbara. And please, if you're there, use the energy of the group to propel you. You know, if you can, just absolutely go for it. And then when you have a chance, when you're meditating on your cushion at home, or when you're just sitting there with a cup of tea, or when you're on the bus, then go through that Tonglen meditation. Take something that really moved you and focus on that.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, I'm going to do my little summary because I've gone over as usual. So our summary with concentration. So the concentration, it's the two arms. It's the two arms that hold the axe. The axe is the wisdom that cuts at the root of suffering. And the core strength, that means that our arms work, the core strength is our ethics. So the ethics means that our concentration technology has a backing, a strength to it. And those two arms can be the two wings of the bird: love, kindness, concern. So a virtuous mind, and wisdom, remembering interdependence, and remembering cause and effect, and the power of analysis, and analyzing. What we're going to be analyzing, which will be next week, is the very nature of ourselves and reality, and how we've got it wrong and how we can get it right. And if we get it right, that's cutting the root of samsara. So Our concentration, it's not just a neutral thing, because that's just ordinary concentration. What our concentration has to be is higher concentration. So it's informed by ethics. And concentration is the opposite of what do you call it? Emotion capture or attention capture. And normally, everything that we focus our mind on is because it's been captured, mostly captured by the senses, or then captured by memory. The internal, what are they called? Mental representations. So all of it, that's attention capture. What we want to do is be able to direct our attention. And so try and do that every day. And so like Barbara, you know, try and actually just sit there and remember the things about the Tonglen, even if it's just out of order or whatever, but just to become familiar with that and on purpose, put your mind on that at your own bidding. So it's the opposite to attention capture or daily external dominance by the senses or our memories. And then meditation on the Buddha. So really pick a really supercharged object that's going to help us, not just an ordinary one. So the Buddha, or a quality of enlightenment, like compassion or loving kindness or patience or generosity or any of those, and stick with it for a concerted amount of time till it works, till you've actually focused your mind. And of course, with meditating on the Buddha, we have the external prompt, then we have the internal mental representation, and that brings us to the meaning and the experience. So the homework, notice a name, you know, just spend some time becoming aware what's happening externally, then bring your attention inwards, becoming aware what's happening internally, and then noticing and naming what's going on. So getting to use those two guards on the guard tower to look out for what's happening, and especially those negative ones, to stop them in their tracks. Shall we do our dedications then? John, if you'd like to get the dedications up, and we'll dedicate all of our effort and so what we can do, we can think that we gather up all of the energy of this session together, and we put it in the service of something. So this is dedicating. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that has not arisen, arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then the way to delight our gurus is to offer our practice. That's what makes them happy. And it is the offering our practice and seeking to create harmony and support each other in our Dharma journey is the strongest way to make sure our gurus live long lives. So offering to His Holiness, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And offering to Khyentse Sopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who mercifully accomplished magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Ursula Hita, Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far off places, especially the West, Mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request. O Lama, please, please live long. And you too, may you all live long and continue to enjoy your practice. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you, Miffi.
Thank you, Miffi.
It was great
Thank you, Miffi.
hiring.
Thank you, Miffi.